Some betrayals don't just break your heart, they ignite your soul. I'm at a prestigious event, poised and radiant, when a familiar voice stops me cold. The man who shattered my world now stands before me, broke and regretful. He thought I'd remain broken. He had no idea who I'd become. I remember that day like a scene from a nightmare, a day when my perfect life was shattered in an instant. It began with a stolen glance and whispered lies, moments that built slowly until the truth exploded in my face. I recall the subtle shifts in conversation, the way glances exchanged between my husband and my best friend hinted at secrets hidden behind closed doors. Then came the gut-wrenching confession. Not in words, but in the cold realization that they had been planning a new life together behind my back. Every detail of that moment is seared into my memory. I stood there in disbelief, feeling the crushing weight of betrayal as the reality unfolded. They weren't merely having an affair. They had built a world where I was not only excluded, but made to feel like I was the problem. It was as if I had been the obstacle they needed to overcome to reach their perfect life together. The public humiliation was unbearable. In front of our closest friends and family, my world crumbled. The breakup was cruelly orchestrated, leaving me exposed and vulnerable. As the news spread, the whispers turned into outright mockery. My ex-husband and my so-called best friend flaunted their deception, parading their betrayal like a trophy, as if my pain were a minor inconvenience in their grand design. I watched in horror as they celebrated their new beginning, dismissing my worth and erasing my role from our shared history. The sensory overload of that moment still haunts me, the bitter taste of betrayal lingering on my tongue, and the ringing silence that followed when the door slammed shut behind me. I could feel the weight of a discarded wedding ring pressed into my palm, a cold, unyielding symbol of promises broken and dreams destroyed. Each of these sensations etched a mark into my heart, reminding me that nothing would ever be the same again. In the midst of the chaos, I heard the final blow, spoken with icy finality by the one I had trusted most. You were just holding me back. She's everything you could never be. Those words, harsh and unfeeling, cut deeper than any action could, sealing my humiliation and leaving me questioning every ounce of my worth. I stood there, feeling the sting of tears I couldn't shed, as the realization set in that I was nothing, more than a stepping stone in their pursuit of a new life. The room filled with the echoes of whispered gossip and the weight of judgment, each murmur a reminder that they had stripped me of everything I once believed in. Yet as painful as that day was, it marked the beginning of a transformation I never saw coming. They thought they'd won, that by breaking me in front of everyone, they had the last laugh. But as I watched them celebrate their betrayal, I felt a spark ignite within me, a promise that this was not the end of my story, but the catalyst for something far greater. Their victory was only temporary, for the seeds of my comeback had been planted that very day. And so, as I turned away from the ruins of what once was, I silently vowed that their story was just beginning, and mine was about to take a powerful, irreversible turn. After that crushing betrayal, my world fell apart. I was left with nothing, no stability, no sense of worth, and a constant gnawing emptiness that echoed every day. I remember the endless days that blurred together, where every wake-up felt like a battle against a relentless storm of grief. The life I once knew dissolved into unpaid bills, rejection after rejection, and a haunting feeling that every opportunity was slipping through my fingers. I tried to reach out for help, but every door I knocked on was slammed shut without a second thought. Former friends, those who once cheered me on, now whispered behind my back, convinced I had somehow brought this on myself. Every rejection letter was a dagger to my heart, confirming what I feared most, that maybe I was never truly good enough. I started questioning every decision I had made, every promise I had believed in. Maybe I was always meant to fail, I would murmur in the silence of my tiny, cold apartment. Nights stretched long and empty, with the only company being the dim glow of my laptop at 3 a.m. and the persistent tick of a clock that seemed to mock me with every passing second. The stale air of my room felt heavy, and my hunger for both food and hope grew unbearable. Each day, I trudged through the grayness, feeling as though I were slowly fading away. The isolation was the worst. I sat in that barren space, surrounded by reminders of a life that was once full of promise. A stack of old photos, a wedding album gathering dust, and memories of laughter now turned bitter. Every corner of that apartment reminded me of what I had lost, and I could feel the weight of loneliness pressing in on me, making it hard to breathe. It was during one of these long, sleepless nights that the truth finally hit me. I was being defined by their cruelty. The whispers, the scorn, the endless string of no's were not the measure of my worth. I found myself staring into a mirror one particularly dark night, the reflection before me a mixture of exhaustion and despair. My eyes, red from crying and heavy with doubt, seemed to ask a question I was too tired to answer. Was I ever truly enough? In that moment, the bitter taste of defeat turned to resolve. I realized that if no one was going to offer me a chance, I would have to create my own opportunities. The despair that had once threatened to consume me began to shift into something unexpected, a spark of determination. I wiped away the tears and took a long, shuddering breath, feeling the chill of the night air through the window. The silence of that lonely apartment, once so oppressive, now offered me a space to plan my comeback. The turning point was quiet and almost imperceptible, a soft, inner voice that insisted I would no longer let their cruelty dictate my future. I made a promise to myself then. I would transform this devastation into the foundation of something new. Every rejection, every hurtful word, every moment of isolation would be the building blocks of my resurgence. I whispered into the darkness, "If I can't find a way, I'll make one." Those words, though barely audible, carried the weight of all my pent-up resolve. They were a vow that my story was far from over, that I had the strength to rebuild from the wreckage of my shattered dreams. The days that followed were a blur of small steps toward reclaiming my life. I searched for even the tiniest chance to prove that I wasn't meant to be broken. Every small win, a kind word from a stranger, a response to an email, a fleeting moment of hope, became fuel for my determination. Though the journey was long and filled with the remnants of pain, I began to see that I still had the power to shape my destiny. With every challenge I faced, I slowly reclaimed a piece of my lost self, stitching together the fragments of who I was with newfound resolve. I realized that the betrayal, as devastating as it had been, would not define me. Instead, it was the catalyst for my transformation, a harsh lesson that spurred me to fight back with everything I had. And so, in that lonely room, under the dim light and with the echo of my own whispered promise lingering in the air, I decided to rise. I vowed to create a future that was mine alone, one built on resilience and the unwavering belief that I deserved better. The nights grew less bitter, and with every new dawn, I felt a small spark of hope. I was determined to turn every painful memory into the strength I needed to forge my own path. I began my journey of rebuilding with a fierce determination to reclaim everything I lost. Every morning, before the sun even rose, I would wake up with a fire in my belly, determined to prove to myself and the world that I was more than my past. I started by taking on small gigs. Every freelance project, every odd job, every chance to put my skills to the test. At first, it was just scraps of work, but each job was a stepping stone, a tiny victory that slowly began to restore my confidence. The early days were grueling. I worked tirelessly into the night, fueled by an unyielding drive to succeed. I'd rise before dawn, my eyes heavy from sleepless nights yet sparkling with a spark of hope. I spent long hours at my computer, drafting proposals and sending out emails, each one a silent declaration that I wasn't going to be defeated by rejection. There were times when exhaustion hit me like a wave, when every moment felt like an uphill battle, but I refused to give in. Every rejection letter, every missed opportunity, only stoked the fire inside me to work even harder. As the weeks turned into months, those small gigs began to add up. I started to see the first signs of a comeback. A client would call to thank me for a job well done, or a project would receive unexpected praise online. Slowly but surely, my work began to speak for itself. I reached out to former colleagues and attended networking events, determined to rebuild my reputation from the ground up. I joined industry groups on social media, attended local meetups, and even took a few classes to refine my skills. Every step I took, no matter how small, was part of a larger plan to reinvent myself. I remember one day in particular when everything began to click. I had just finished a challenging project, a tight deadline, endless revisions, and a final product that I knew was my best work yet. Later that week, at a local industry gathering, I found myself mingling with professionals who had once seemed so out of reach. I was cautious at first, but as the night wore on, I started to share my journey, my struggles, and the small victories that had defined my comeback. Then, out of nowhere, a former doubter approached me with wide eyes and an incredulous smile. "Wait, is this your company now?" they asked, their voice a mix of shock and admiration. In that moment, I felt every late night, every ounce of sweat and tear had been worth it. Their disbelief was the confirmation I needed. I was no longer the person who had been left behind. Every new contract I signed, every successful pitch, filled me with a sense of triumph. The rush of adrenaline when I landed a major client was unforgettable. The crisp feel of a freshly inked contract, the soft hum of notifications on my phone, and the constant, thrilling pulse of progress all combined to create a heady mix of satisfaction and possibility. I began to develop a presence in my industry, a name that people started to recognize and respect. With every small win, I was crafting not just a career, but a complete reinvention of who I was. I spent long days in coffee shops, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingling with the quiet buzz of determination as I worked on business plans and creative pitches. I immersed myself in every opportunity to learn, attending workshops and seminars, and even seeking out mentors who had once been in my shoes. Their guidance and the supportive nods of new connections became the building blocks of my resurgence. I started to see that my struggles were not the end of my story. They were the beginning of something new, something powerful. Slowly, I began to attract attention. A well-known publication ran a feature on my journey, and invitations to exclusive industry events started to flood in. With each new accolade, I could feel the weight of my past lifting. I no longer defined myself by the moments of rejection. Instead, I celebrated the resilience that had allowed me to rise. The more I succeeded, the more I realized that my worth was not determined by anyone else's opinion, but by my own relentless drive. There were still challenges, of course. Some days the memories of my failures crept in, and the old doubts tried to whisper that I wasn't enough. But I learned to silence those voices by focusing on the tangible successes in front of me. The glowing reviews, the increasing number of clients, and the undeniable progress in my portfolio. Each setback was simply another lesson, another chance to improve, and with every obstacle overcome, I became a little stronger. The transformation was both internal and external. I revamped my wardrobe to reflect the new confidence I had gained, a collection of sharp, professional outfits that made me feel unstoppable. I updated my online presence, ensuring that every profile and portfolio showcased the best of my work. I even began to share my story openly, not out of vanity, but as a way to inspire others who might be struggling to see a way out of their own darkness. My social media channels started to buzz with messages of support, and slowly the narrative shifted from one of despair to one of hope and determination. One evening, after a particularly productive day filled with promising meetings and new contracts, I found myself alone in my small office. The soft glow of a desk lamp illuminated the room as I sat back and reflected on how far I had come. I felt the echo of every sacrifice and every moment of doubt fade into the background, replaced by a steady rhythm of determination and pride. I looked at my reflection in the window, seeing not the tired person I once was, but a confident, resilient individual who had risen from the ashes of rejection. As I took a deep, satisfying breath, I knew in that moment that my journey was only beginning. Every challenge, every small victory, had been a crucial step toward reclaiming my identity. I whispered quietly to myself, a promise that would carry me into the future. They laughed at me then, but soon they'll know my name. And with that quiet, powerful declaration, I stepped forward into a new era of possibility, fueled by the knowledge that I was unstoppable. My success began to spread like wildfire. I could feel it in every nod of approval and every whispered conversation that now spoke of my name in the same breath as innovation and excellence. Invitations to industry events and exclusive gatherings started pouring in, and soon I found myself rubbing shoulders with top executives and influential leaders. Every time I stepped into a room, I could feel the shift in the air, a mix of admiration and disbelief that I had transformed my life so completely. It wasn't just luck, it was the result of relentless work, and I could see it shining in every detail around me. The media caught on quickly. Articles featured my story, and soon my journey from heartbreak to triumph became an inspiration to many. I was no longer just a survivor of a broken promise. I had become a symbol of resilience. People started to recognize me as someone who had built an empire from the ruins of betrayal. I felt the satisfaction of seeing my name on headlines and the subtle thrill of knowing that every achievement was a clear rebuttal to the doubts of my past. I began receiving congratulatory messages and offers to collaborate, and each new connection reinforced the reality that I was finally in control of my destiny. Meanwhile, my ex, the one who vanished before our wedding, leaving nothing but heartache behind, was beginning to crumble. His life, once filled with promises of a bright future, was now marked by a series of missteps. I started hearing rumors that his financial struggles were mounting and that his reputation in our industry was falling apart. It seemed that the very choices he made out of selfishness had come back to haunt him. His once admired charm was now replaced by a desperate, almost pitiful look that he couldn't hide. I would catch glimpses of him in social media posts or brief appearances at events, and each time it was clear that his life was unraveling. I remember one particular press event that marked the turning point. The venue was a modern, high-end space with soft music playing and the flash of cameras, capturing every moment. As I stepped onto the stage to introduce my latest project, I felt a surge of energy that filled the entire room. I spoke confidently about my vision and the innovations I was bringing to the table, and every word resonated with power. The audience responded with enthusiastic applause, and for a brief moment it felt as if the entire industry was cheering me on. I could feel the smooth weight of my designer watch on my wrist, a silent testament to the success I had earned through blood, sweat, and tears. The air was rich with the scent of expensive cologne and fresh ideas, and I knew then that my journey was not just personal, but a victory for everyone who had ever doubted me. In that same event, as I mingled with key decision-makers, I couldn't help but notice a familiar, unwelcome name flickering on my phone screen, a notification from an unknown number. I glanced at it, and for a split second, my heart skipped a beat. It was a message from him. His desperate words, laced with regret and a hint of panic, reminded me that he was still trying to find his way back to what he had lost. I felt a mix of emotions, satisfaction at how far I'd come, and a cold certainty that his downfall was inevitable. Every congratulatory comment I received, every nod of approval from influential people, was like a resounding message that my life was now a testament to my resilience, while his was crumbling under the weight of his own mistakes. I could see the difference in our worlds every time I checked my phone. My notifications were filled with positive messages from collaborators and offers for new projects. Meanwhile, his name appeared alongside phrases like help, desperate, and regret. It was as if the universe was sending me a clear sign that the tables had turned completely. The flash of cameras at every public appearance, the firm handshake of every influential leader, and the subtle, approving glances from those who once doubted me all contributed to this new reality. A reality where I was unstoppable and he was left to face the consequences of his choices. As the weeks passed, my influence grew exponentially. I was invited to speak at high-profile events, share my story on renowned platforms, and even participate in panel discussions that shaped industry trends. My transformation wasn't just personal. It was public, and every success was a declaration that I had reclaimed my worth. I was building an empire from the ground up, and every step I took was a rebuke to the man who had once abandoned me without a second thought. Often found myself reflecting on how surreal it all was. The very people who once whispered that I wasn't enough were now the ones looking up to me. I became a beacon of hope for those who had been cast aside, a living example that from the depths of despair, greatness can emerge. The energy in every room I entered was electric, charged with the promise of innovation and the unyielding spirit of someone who had fought against all odds. Then, one crisp evening as I sat in my modern office reviewing the day's successes, my phone buzzed once again. This time the message was unmistakable, a desperate plea from him, my ex, reaching out in a final attempt to connect. I stared at the screen, feeling the cool metal of the device in my hand, and the notification served as a stark reminder of the power shift that had taken place. He, who once held all the power, was now reduced to a broken man, his words barely forming a coherent message. That notification was a clear sign. While I had risen to heights he never dreamed possible, he was still struggling in the ruins of his own making. The weight of that moment was profound. The sensory details, the flash of cameras at events, The palpable buzz of admiration and the constant reminder of my accomplishments cemented the reality that I was now a force to be reckoned with. His desperate message, brief and laden with regret, was the final piece in the puzzle of my transformation. It confirmed everything. I had not only reclaimed my life, but I had also built a future so brilliant that his return was nothing more than a tragic footnote in my story. I set the phone aside, a quiet smile playing on my lips as I absorbed the full magnitude of the turnaround. The world had witnessed my rise, and every congratulatory word, every nod of respect, reinforced the truth that I was no longer defined by the pain of the past. I had carved out a new identity, one that radiated success and self-worth, and as the night settled in, I couldn't help but feel that every moment of my journey had led me to this ultimate power shift, a moment where the echoes of my former heartbreak were replaced by the resounding cheers of a bright, unstoppable future. I walked into the elegant venue, every step filled with purpose, knowing that this was the moment I had been preparing for. The room was alive with energy, soft music, glimmering lights, and the subtle murmur of influential voices sharing ideas. I had spent years transforming my pain into power, and tonight was the night to reveal just how far I had come. Amid the crowd, my eyes found him, the man who had once left me shattered by running off with my best friend, abandoning me when I needed him most. He stood at the edge of the gathering, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief as he caught sight of me. His appearance was a far cry from the confident figure he once was. Now he looked disheveled and desperate, as if his world had finally begun to crumble. I moved through the room with a quiet strength, every gesture deliberate, every step a testament to the resilience I had built over countless days of struggle. As I approached, the whispers of admiration and the flash of cameras seemed to echo a new reality, one where I was the one in control, not the one who had been left behind. The atmosphere was electric, and every eye turned toward us, sensing that something monumental was about to unfold. He hesitated for a moment before stepping forward, his voice faltering as he attempted, I didn't expect to see you here. His words, heavy with regret and a trace of panic, resonated painfully against the backdrop of the room's elegant chatter. I could see his eyes darting around, searching for support, as if he hoped someone would validate his presence. But I was no longer that person who crumbled at the sight of betrayal. I stood tall, the memory of every tear and every setback now transformed into an unwavering confidence. With the room growing quieter by the second, I spoke in a voice that was calm, yet filled with undeniable resolve. You left me alone when I needed you most, I said softly, each word measured and clear, carrying the weight of all I had endured. His eyes widened further, and I could see the regret intensify, as if he suddenly understood the magnitude of his mistakes. The murmurs of the crowd grew, a mix of sympathy and approval rippling through the air, punctuating the charged silence that had fallen between us. He tried to interject, stammering something about apologies and explanations, but his voice cracked, under the pressure. I let the silence stretch, feeling it deepen like a chasm that separated the past from the present. In that suspended moment, I recalled every betrayal, every stolen dream, and every moment of humiliation that had once defined me. Now, those memories fueled my words. I spent years rebuilding from the ashes of your selfish choices. I worked until I became the person I always deserved to be. A murmur of astonishment spread across the room as I continued. I built my own empire, brick by brick, through every rejection, every bitter tear, every moment I was told I wasn't enough. The sound of my words echoed, each syllable resonating with the conviction of someone who had conquered unimaginable odds. His eyes darted nervously, and I saw him shrink, a shadow of the man who had once held so much power over my life. Then, as if in a final futile attempt, he whispered, "Please, I never meant to hurt you." The plea was weak, barely audible, lost in the thunder of my declaration. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the intensity of the moment settle over us both. "I could have given you another chance," I said, my tone measured but biting. "But some lessons are best learned the hard way." The words hung in the air, sharp and final, and every eye in the room bore witness to the reversal of our fates. The crowd, a mixture of old colleagues and new allies, erupted in quiet, approving applause. Their recognition of my journey and my transformation was a silent confirmation that I was no longer defined by the past. I felt a surge of satisfaction, a deep, unyielding vindication that washed over me like a tide. Every detail of the night, the subtle fragrance of fresh linen mingling with the rich aroma of fine perfume, the soft murmur of hushed conversations, the glow of crystal chandeliers, became a symbol of the new era I had built from the ruins of betrayal. As the conversation died down, I noticed the soft beep of my phone. I glanced at it and saw a message, a desperate final plea from him, laden with regret and the faint echo of a man who had lost everything he once held dear. For a split second, I allowed myself a quiet smile, a recognition of the full circle of karma. The message was a reminder that while I had risen to heights he never imagined, he was still trying to claw his way back from the wreckage of his own making. In that moment, I realized that the power of my journey was not about revenge in the traditional sense. It was about reclaiming my own self-worth and proving that I could build a future that shone so brightly it rendered all his past mistakes insignificant. Every step I took that night, every nod of approval from the influential figures around me, reinforced that truth. I stepped away from him, each stride a firm declaration that I was moving forward. The room's energy, the approving glances, the subtle yet pervasive aura of triumph all spoke volumes about how completely the tables had turned. I could feel the pulse of success in every beat of my heart, the rhythm of a future that was mine to shape. And as I left, I whispered a final, quiet vow to myself, a vow that would echo long after the night ended. You thought I'd take you back, that I'd still care. But you were so wrong. With that, I walked away, leaving behind a man who was nothing more than a reminder of a past that no longer held any power over me. The night air greeted me with a gentle coolness, and in that moment, I knew that my journey had reached a new peak. A peak where I was no longer defined by the betrayal, but by the incredible strength I had forged in its wake. I stand here now, a living testament to every hardship overcome and every tear turned into strength. The pain of that betrayal, the agony of being abandoned, have all faded into a distant memory, replaced by the bright glow of a future built on my own terms. My journey wasn't just about survival. It was about transforming every moment of despair into a stepping stone towards something extraordinary. I've built a life filled with purpose and success, and every achievement is a reminder that I was never defined by the actions of those who hurt me. As I reflect on the past, I see how every insult, every broken promise, and every lonely night shaped me into the person I am today, a person who now radiates confidence and resilience. The echoes of hurtful words no longer hold power over me. Instead, they've become the fuel for my continued growth. I've learned that true victory isn't measured by revenge, but by the strength to move on, to create a world where I belong without needing validation from anyone else. While the one who once abandoned me drifts in a sea of regret, unable to escape the consequences of his own choices, I am free. My life is now a tapestry of love, respect, and endless possibilities. I've surrounded myself with people who cherish my presence, with opportunities that elevate my dreams, and with the unwavering knowledge that I deserve every bit of success I have achieved. Tonight, as I savor the quiet hum of celebration around me and feel the warmth of genuine connections, I know that I've finally left the past behind. The weight of betrayal has lifted, replaced by the liberating lightness of a heart that no longer carries old wounds. I walk forward with unshakable resolve, knowing that the best revenge wasn't in making someone suffer. It was in realizing that I never needed them to define my worth. Some betrayals break you, but the right ones set you free. And now, I am free.